everyone, welcome to another video for SimonSaysStamp.com. Today I'm distress marker watercoloring two images from Magnolia, and these two images are from the Once Upon a Time collection. It just came out. The first one is this little girl, and that is the Princess P stamp. And then the mattresses, they're separate images. The mattresses are Tilda's mattress, and I just stamped the mattress and then I stamped the little girl on top. And I'm coloring her skin with Tattered Rose distress marker. Just added those to the outer areas of her face, her arms, neck, and her feet. And now I'm picking up some water with my watercolor brush and pulling it over to the image so that it softens those edges. I just used a mini mister and misted some water onto the craft sheet so that the water would kind of pool over there on the side. Just a little bit easier than using a cup of water or something like that. So after I had the Tattered Rose done, I went in with Worn lipstick, and I love using Worn lipstick for blush colors on faces and for kind of pink areas, just because it's such a nice soft pink, and it's really easy to take your watercolor brush with a little bit of water and pull it into the rest of the image. I always do blush after I've already done the skin tones so that the paper is moist and it really softens those edges, and I can pull it into the rest of the face. So I'm just adding more of that. And then I wanted to add some Vintage Photo to darken up the edges, but I didn't want to add a whole lot to it, so I used the small tip of the marker and added just that brown along the outer edge of her face and also on her arms and her feet. Just a little tiny bit of Vintage Photo. And then I went in with my watercolor brush and sort of just kind of wiggled it right along that edge, trying to soften that brown line. Adding a little bit of brown along the edges is just going to give a little bit more depth to the face and make sure that there's a little bit of shading on her face. I'm not being really particular about shadows and highlights on this image. It's just going to be really simple coloring, but I did want a little bit more of that brown warmth around the edges of the skin tones. So I'm drying her with my heat tool because I'm going to move on to her hair. And if I didn't dry up all of those skin tones, when I add water to her hair color, it would let that color bleed into her face. And I didn't want that to happen, so I dried it off before. I'm now using Wild Honey. I find that Wild Honey is the perfect color for blonde hair. So I just went around the outer edges, and I'm going to pull this in with some water. I always remind myself to use a really light hand when I use Wild Honey because it is one of the colors that reacts really, really well with water, and it can really spread around. So I only used a small amount. So I skipped ahead, and I'm doing the greens and peeled paint and shabby shutters. This is for her outfit. I'm going to start with the lighter green, and I'm going to be adding the color to the outer edges of her little outfit. Basically just going over the areas like around the outside edge, and then I'll be bringing the color into the center. When I was younger and I was always coloring in coloring books, I would always do that first. I would outline the shape and the color kind of with a darker color, and then go in with the center. And that's kind of the same idea here, is that you want to be adding the darker colors to the outside edges and then using the watercolor brush to pull it into the center. So after I did the lighter green, I went in with the darker green as well to add a little more depth to that. And I also painted her bow on the top of her head as well. Now I'm going to go on to the mattresses, and the first mattress I'm coloring in Tumbled Glass. Just going to add that color on. I'm not going to do the watercoloring just yet because I'm going to be skipping kind of almost every other mattress so that I can paint these and then dry them and then move on to the next one, so I don't have any of the colors bleeding into each other. So I'm using Worn lipstick on this area, and now I'm going in with peeled paint, and I'm going to be doing the stripes on this striped mattress, just every other. I'm putting the color on the very bottom so that when I add water to it, that there's a little more shading at the very bottom. Now I'm using Crushed Olive, and I'm doing the same for this one. It's just going to be a tone-on-tone green striped mattress. Now I'm going to go in with my watercolor brush, and you'll notice that I think it was before I started her outfit, I switched watercolor brushes. I was using a traditional brush beforehand when I was using her face, doing her face and her hair, and then I switched to this aquash brush, and that's because This aquash brush has a little bit more spring to the bristles, and it's a little bit easier to move the color around. So I just switched over to that. There's very little water in the barrel of this brush, so I'm still picking up water to the side off of my craft sheet. Just pulling in those green colors all the way to the very top of the striped mattress. Did the crushed olive first, which is the lighter shade, and now I'm doing peeled paint. Just pulling those to the very top of the mattress. And then at this point, I dried all of the mattresses so that I could move on to the rest. I added dusty concord at the very bottom there, and also spiced marmalade for that kind of orangey golden mattress. Now I'm adding some more dusty concord to this very top mattress here. You'll notice there's an area off to the side here that where I've got some of the ink to the left of the image. That was when I was adding dusty concord to that purple mattress at the bottom. Dusty concord can be a little bit of a strong color, and I wanted to kind of water it down a little bit before I added it to my image. So now I'm going in with Stormy Sky, doing the same thing I did with that purple. Watered it down quite a bit, diluted the color with a lot of water, and added some shadow underneath the mattress. And after I added the purple, that's really pale Stormy Sky color, then I decided I wanted a little bit more black, a little more gray to it. So I added some black soot and brought in that gray into that shadow area. And that finishes the image, except I wanted to darken up that orange mattress just a little bit. So I took the spiced marmalade marker once again and added a bunch of color to the very bottom of the mattress. And that's just going to help me pull that color up to the very top, but still keep the most of the shading and the dark color at the very bottom of the mattress. Just pulling that in. So after that was done, I set my image aside to dry. And then I ended up trimming it down and putting it on the front of a card base. And I wanted the image to be more near the top of the card, so I ended up cutting the top off and then moving it to the bottom. And there's a little bit of a seam there that I'm going to cover with a sentiment. I'm stamping the sentiment on some pattern paper from Cosmo Cricut. This is the Sweet Disposition 8x8 pattern paper pad, and I'm going to be embossing, so I'm going to use the powder tool to eliminate any of those areas that might stick to non-stamped, any embossing powders that would stick. So I stamped that in Versamark ink and sprinkled on some white embossing powder, flicked off the excess, and then heated it with my heat tool until it melted. And then I cut it down to a longer strip, and then took the ends and cut little V-shape ribbon ends on it. And now it's going to cover that seam that I was telling you about. I just put some foam circles on the back of it and then covered up that seam. At this point, I decided I wanted to add a little heart to just to the right of Thinking of You. So I die cut a little red heart using the Simon Says Stamp Mini Hearts die set. And I glued that down with some Tombow Mono multi-glue and coated it with some Christmas red stickles. Just to add a little more handmade touch to the card, I took a white gel pen and added some dashed lines along the bottom of the sentiment and also along the sides. And then I corner chomped the very top corners of the card with a 1/2 inch corner rounder punch. So that's the card for today. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching.